Hey there, welcome to the Schwowin's Nest. My name is Sandra and I'm so glad you're here. Today I am so excited to recreate these Pottery Barn inspired looks for way less using trash to treasure that I've got hanging around my house. Let's go. I'm starting off with this silver dollar tabletop tree. So it's not very big. It's perfect for on a table, on a counter, wherever. I made this lemon tree years ago, and it has been sitting in my garage for a really long time. So I'm just going to take it apart. I like the bones of it, but it needs to be a lot looser, a lot more sparse. And of course, these ficus leaves need to get changed into a different shape completely. I'm going to continue pulling off some branches and some stems. I'm going to grab my scissors and snip some of the stuff that I don't need, and then I'll be able to start working on it and making it look beautiful. Here's what it looks like right now. It's a lot less full, and I'm liking the look of it, but now I've got to change up those leaf shapes. Silver dollar leaves are very similar to eucalyptus, so I am just going to cut out what shape I think looks good. I'm going to round off that top, getting rid of the point, and then I'm going to kind of make it a little bit of a wider piece on the top than it is towards the bottom. I'm going to show you here in a sec, and this is the most time-consuming part of this project, but I really think it's worth it. So if you've got a tree like this in your home and you're tired of the look of it, and you want to create something new, then by all means, let's get into creating some high-end decor with a trash to treasure price. Here's a look at the shape that I am using to cut these leaves into. It's still got a little bit of a pointed top, but not quite that sharp. Next, I went into my garden and I've got a bush that has a lot of dry branches on it that need to get cleaned up, but I haven't gotten around to it. So I just trimmed off a couple of the branches, and what you want is something that you can fit into a drilled hole in the original stem, which is a piece of wood. It's not plastic. It was an actual branch that I used for that original lemon tree. You want something that has some additional little branches because, of course, each branch is going to have its own little leaves going off in different directions. So I'm going to do quite a few of these. I'm going to fix it up and then start adding some of the leaves onto these branches. All the extra branches that I had pulled off of the original lemon tree, I pre-cut into the eucalyptus or the silver dollar shapes, and now I'm using hot glue to apply them to these additional branches that I've included on the tree. I ended up not leaving these branches quite so long. It ended up being a little more sparse than I wanted it to be, so I just adjusted it. Once I had all the leaves on, and I just took a look at it, spun it around a few times to make sure that it was fairly even on all sides. And I just started trimming and then adding the trimmed pieces onto some different areas. So this is not a science to this. It's how does it look? Do I like it? And let's fix it if it doesn't look the way you expected it. I did find this $8.99 cookie jar at the thrift store, and yeah, it was a little pricey, but it is completely stone and it has this gray glaze on it, but it looks like a crock, right? So I decided to take this putty chalk paint, which is from Krylon, and it's just something I had in my stash. I've always got a little helper when I'm in the garage. Check out where that black arrow is, and you're going to see my little friend Chippy just popping her head around the corner, popping in and popping out. She's so cute. Anyway, a couple of quick coats of this chalk paint, and I'm going to leave it the matte finish. I think it turned out gorgeous. Now I've got my tree stuffed into the pot with just whatever I had hanging around. There's a few pieces of wood down at the bottom just to wedge it in place. And then I did some old floral foam on top. And this is just some pea gravel. I'm just going to throw that in the top. I think it just makes a little beautiful accent instead of just using dirt or moss. I was just tired of using moss all the time on all of my plants, and I have this extra pea gravel. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. Let's take a look at both of the trees side by side, and you guys can let me know what you think. Mine is on the left, and the Pottery Barn inspiration is on the right. I really love the look of this barrel tray, and I knew I could recreate it when I remembered I had this tray that I created last year sometime. It's a 24-inch round, and I just used some Jenga blocks, which I got at the thrift store for about $4 for the whole box, and I just used hot glue and glued them all together. I think I had to shave one of the blocks down just a little bit with my rotary tool. What I'm going to do now is just take my favorite stain, and this is just a water-based stain. All it is water and a couple of different shades of brown, a little bit of black, and it creates sort of this dark walnut kind of finish. I always have it in this little squirt bottle from the Dollar Tree, so it's ready to go whenever I want it. And if I need to change the color a little bit, I can just add some of my acrylic paints and change up the color. I'm applying it with a rag, and I'm just going to go everywhere around it, and it's going to look gorgeous. Remember these cookie trays from the Dollar Tree? I had one buried in my stash, pulled it out, and I really love these for creating something that is a faux galvanized look. The texture of these cookie sheets was perfect with that sort of bumpy look on it. Even when you smoothed it out, it still looked really true to a galvanized kind of piece. But my Dollar Tree doesn't carry them anymore. So if you still have these, let me know, because um, they are really fun to use for crafting. Anyhow, let's move on. I'm going to cut this into 4 different strips. Make sure I have enough to go all the way around the tray, like the inspiration. I just used a piece of scrap wood to smooth out the lines on this. And once I'm done that, I'm just going to cut it into 4 strips, fold them up so there aren't any sharp edges, and make sure that they fit all the way around the tray. Each time I made a fold, I did use the piece of wood just to smooth it down a little bit more. I had to trim a little bit, and then I just measured it up against the tray to make sure I had the right width. The paint that I'm using is a automotive paint. It actually is for metal, so I know it's going to stick really good. And it's sort of a, I don't know, I guess a dark gray, you could say. I'm going to give this just one coat, making sure I cover all of the pieces. And you know what? It was dry in about 5 minutes. So that was a real bonus. Now, getting these metal pieces stuck to the tray was going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of patience, I guess you could say. You can't use hot glue. I mean, you could, but it's not going to stick permanently. And I wanted this to stick permanently. So I'm going to be using Gorilla Glue Clear Grip. I'm going to put it on the wood, and then I'm going to put the strip on, and I'm going to use a gazillion different clamps, and I'm going to make sure that it's clamped on there really well. I ended up clamping this and leaving it overnight. The whole thing was clamped down, so it was really funny to take a look at, but I just had it sitting there overnight, and once I took all the clamps off the next morning, it was completely dry and permanently adhered to this. And I'm okay with that because I really love how this one turned out. So if you don't want it to be a permanent fixture, then go ahead and just use some hot glue. Another idea to affix this somewhat permanently is to use double-sided tape. That would probably work too, but I didn't have any, so I was not going to go out to the store and get some. I'm just going to do it with what I have on hand. One thing I'm doing a little differently with this piece as well is I'm not going to be putting any handles on this tray. I like how it turned out just the way it was. Let's see the trays side by side so you can let me know what you think. Mine was about $16 if I had to add up all the stuff that I used, and the Pottery Barn one, $145. The final project I have for you today is using this old tin bucket to create this stone look vase with preserved boxwood. Now, preserved boxwood is super expensive, and that is something I would never invest in, but it is absolutely gorgeous. So I'm just going to recreate with what I have on hand. This tin bucket has been hanging around for a long time. It had a really sort of an ugly arrangement in it, so I wasn't really using it. So this is a perfect way to upcycle this into something beautiful. Once that was completely dry, I put some white acrylic paint into a bowl and I'm adding a lot of baking soda. This is the first batch of baking soda that I'm going to add to it. I do end up adding a little bit more, and I'm using this stippling brush. This is my favorite brush to add even more texture to these types of projects. So mix it in. Don't be afraid to add a lot of baking soda. You'll still have a workable paint, but if it does get too thick, you can thin it down with a little bit of water. A quick tip for you is don't paint up and down and in straight lines like I am. I wish I would have gone more in a circular motion, or maybe even just kind of cross-hatched it a little bit, which is where you go back and forth in sort of like an X pattern, because you were able to see a little bit of the lines because of course I'm adding texture to it. So live and learn. Next time I do a project like this, I will do something a little bit differently with how I apply it. I'm going to go through it, give it one good coat, and then I'm going to do a second coat and I'm going to be stippling that. And that is just pouncing your brush up and down. With this second coat, when I'm pouncing, I am not too concerned about getting full coverage. I just want to hide some of the up and down stroke lines. Once that coat was completely dry, I added a little bit of brown paint into this just to give it more of a sort of a dirtier look, I guess is what you would call it. So I'm just mixing up whatever I have left in my little bowl, and I'm going to then just start pouncing it sporadically all over the pot. Not in any type of pattern. I don't want full coverage again. I just want to be able to add a little bit of dimension with this little bit of extra color. And again, I'm definitely not going for full coverage. I'm actually just going to be plopping this on in different areas, because when a terracotta or a concrete pot or whatever that happens to be ages and is weathered from outside, it's not going to age and weather the same way all the way around. So this is a little different of what the original pot turns out like, but again, these are just Pottery Barn inspirations. As I mentioned earlier, preserved boxwood is really expensive, and I didn't even want to use any of the faux flowers that I have in my stash because I didn't have the right look. And then I remembered I have real hydrangeas that are this beautiful green color in my garden. And soon they're going to turn brown. And I thought these are mounded perfectly in sort of a half circle shape. And I could just add these into the pot and make it look like it was a half sphere sitting on the top of my pot. And I really love these hydrangeas, especially when they turn this color. And then towards the fall, even when it gets cooler, they're going to turn a beautiful shade of brown. Let me know what you think of this project. I think it turned out really pretty. It's time to take a look at these two side by side. Mine is on the left, and I only paid $5 a few years ago for that tin pot, and the Pottery Barn inspiration is $143. Would you spend that money on something for your home? I hope you liked my Pottery Barn inspired home decor pieces that are the look of Pottery Barn with a trash to treasure price. Thanks so much for spending some of your time with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.